I was brought up to be Catholic, but I liked spiritualist explanations and a religion called Wicca. Catholicism never satisfied me. My grandmother taught me to pray as a child and to believe in God, but one day I asked myself, if God created everything, who created God? I couldn't find an answer, nobody could explain, so the logical consequence was that I stopped believing in what Catholicism preaches. After that, I started to like Spiritism's explanations of life. I read about Jesus, and I found it fascinating. I got to know a religion called Wicca, and as I learned the arguments of this belief, I felt the urge to search for God, a very strong and deep feeling. But I ended up moving away because the practice was always complicated and I didn't agree with everything. But I think the big start on the road to Islam was after my grandfather died in May 2006. It was a huge pain that caused a lot of changes in my desires and opinions. I couldn't see the point of the things I was doing. I questioned myself all the time. I'm studying so hard at university, what's the point? So that I can go to work to earn money to buy what I want to feel happy, and in the end, what's the point of all this if we're going to die? I became very pessimistic and sad. 2 months later, I met a Pakistani Muslim brother on the internet. When I found out he was Muslim, I told him everything I knew about Islam up until that point. Everything I knew came from school history lessons about the Arab Empire, the news and the soap opera The Clone, which aired in 2001. It's funny that I liked the soap opera so much that I had told my mother that I wanted to be a Muslim, and she only told me that there was an Islamic center here in Salvador, but as I was very young, I didn't want to go there alone, and she wouldn't take me. This brother then told me that everything I had told him was wrong and corrected all my wrong impressions of Islam. I read verses from the Quran for the first time when he showed me the explanations of Islam for my questions, and I always had a good impression. I had a feeling of peace in the midst of agony when I read those verses. Another Pakistani brother had started to contact me, and it was he who really taught me the basics of Islam with patience and a lot of tolerance, always sending me texts that answered my questions. The answers were always very clear and very coherent, and that impressed me a lot, because I still thought Muslims were fanatics. Even the brother who was teaching me was an incorrigible fanatic, but at the same time he was very kind and taught me about the religion. So I wanted to understand how it was possible for someone to be fanatical and at the same time so friendly and peaceful. So I continued to study Islam with him out of curiosity, combined with the feeling of happiness I got from studying Islam. I was encouraged to read the Quran in Portuguese to better understand the verses that were in English, and I started reading the Quran all the time, because over time I found comfort for my sadness at my grandfather's death. One day this brother suggested that I go and see how Islam was practiced, and he got me the address of the Islamic Center in Salvador, as well as finding Muslims here and putting me in touch with them. At first I was scared, really scared, but he gradually convinced me that I had already studied a lot of theory and that I wouldn't be able to really understand Islam if I didn't see what it was like in practice. Finally, I went to the Islamic Center with a Muslim sister he had met on the internet and put us in touch with. Visiting the Islamic Center was really crucial, starting with the fact that I felt such peace there. I saw the sister saying a prayer and the calmness of the place touched me. I started attending the Saturday studies at the Islamic Center, and I was very happy to discover that the subjects they were discussing there were subjects I had already read about and learned a lot from the Pakistani brother, and that made me feel very proud, because I could go to the Islamic Center and I could understand the language of Islam very naturally. My questions after that were no longer, does Islam talk about this? But, what does Islam talk about? I knew there was an answer to my questions and I wanted to know what that answer was. Ramadan was coming up and it was going to start exactly on my birthday. At that point I already felt like a Muslim at heart, but I was still afraid that I would convert and then end up regretting it. For me, Islam was too serious a religion to join and then leave. I had doubts about converting and at the same time I thought it was a sign from Allah, because the first day of such an important time for Muslims would fall on my birthday, which was so important to me. But I felt so afraid that at night when I went to sleep I would cry and pray to God to give me certainty in my heart about what I should do. I think I felt sure, but the fear was so great that it didn't allow me to feel sure. So I decided to wait a little longer and practice a few things. Then I decided to learn the prayer. I used a book that the Sheikh had lent me, which explained the prayers step by step. As I needed to recite the Surat al-Fatiha, I took the transliteration that the book offered, opened youtube.com and tried to learn how to recite the surat. When I thought I could read it, I wrote all the steps of the prayer together with the Surat al-Fatiha on a piece of paper, put it on the floor where I could read it and stood up to do each step in the right order. At Eid ul-Fitr a brother in the mosque corrected my reading of the Surat Fatiha. From then on I started trying to pray at prayer times. I started by saying the Isha every day, then Salat al-Fajr when I managed to wake up on time, until I managed to say all 5 prayers every day to find out what it would be like if I were a real Muslim.